Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our regularly scheduled meeting for the Quality Life and Public Safety Committee meeting for today, November 15th, 2022. My name is Councilman TJ Clark. I serve as the co-chair for the Quality Life and Public Safety Committee, as well as the majority leader for the Hartford City Council. And currently, I'm joined by Councilman Josh Mitchum, who is a voting member. We have Director Susan Webster, the Director of ESMT, Chief Rodney Barco, who is our Chief of Fire, Chief Jason Thody, who is our Chief of Police, and we have also to our staff, Noela Ortiz from Court of Common Council, and Natalie Fiola Guerreri, who is from the Corporation Counsel's Office, and we are streaming live from Hartford Public Access TV, as well as Channel 96 on Comcast Affinity and Channel 6032 on Frontier. So we have a short agenda, which is good. I just want to actually get this one item out of the way, which we still need some more information about, which is item number 4. So Councilman LeBron will not be joining us tonight to discuss any type of possible amendment to that resolution based upon the presentation. So Councilman Mitchum, would you mind offering up a motion to postpone item number 4?
I move that we postpone item number 4.
Moved by Councilman Mitchum, seconded by myself. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. This item is postponed to our next meeting. And now we will move forward with our presentation by Director Webster.
Good evening. Thank you, Councilman Clark. So this evening for emergency services and telecommunications, I'll discuss our 2 main priorities for the department at this point. One is the upgrade to the radio infrastructure. We're moving forward that project very quickly. We are currently in contract negotiations with Eastern Communications for a Harris radio system. We did meet with them today. We had about a 7-hour meeting with them. We involved Corporation Counsel. The fire department was in the room as well. And we made some significant progress. We're hoping to have a contract ready for council approval beginning to mid-December before the holiday break. The second item that I'll discuss this evening is really our priority initiative in the department is our staffing, retention, recruitment. And I am very pleased to say that we have made significant progress. And on Monday, the 21st of November, we'll be starting an academy with 17 new employees, 16 which have been hired as emergency telecommunications dispatchers, and 1 that will be a communications supervisor. So this is unprecedented in our department. I don't think we've started more than 4 or 5 people at any given in time. But because of our staffing crisis at this point, we've really moved forward working with our human resources department and our new training coordinator, who is doing an outstanding job rewriting our program. We've invited some key stakeholders. We've both Chief Thody and Chief Barco, who will hopefully be in attendance to just give their hellos to the new staff members, Mayor Bronin as well. And just to discuss some of our expectations for them and welcome them to the city of Hartford. But we're very, very excited. They'll do a 4-hour classroom learning session, and then they'll move on to the dispatch floor to actually be trained by our communications training officials. So excited for that. And I'm happy to take any questions that anybody might have for us.
Thank you, Director Webster. Are all these new employees that are coming in, are they members of 1716?
16 of them will be members of 1716, and one is with the HPA union, the supervisor.
And how many of these are actually Hartford residents?
And, I don't have that number, but I want to say we have very, very high number of Hartford residents that have been applying and getting hired for the position. So much, much higher than we've ever had with Hartford residents. But I can certainly get you those numbers, sir, because we're very pleased with the number of residents we have coming on board.
That would be much appreciated regarding that. Yeah, it's kind of unheard of these days of this large class of being hired by ES&T. How long was this recruitment process and the HR process to get everybody through screening and ultimately hired?
So HR has been great. We've had continuous recruitment, similar to what the police department does. So they've been doing testing every couple weeks. Then we go through a process of where they go through their physicals, which include a drug test. The police department assists us in doing some of the criminal background. And then we have another investigative company that comes on board and takes them probably another 3 to 4 weeks to do a full background on them, because it's similar to PD. They can't have any type of criminal record if they're going to work within the dispatch center because of the FBI information that they have access to. So all inclusive, I'm going to guess that it's probably a 5-month process, but we've streamlined it significantly from start to finish. So it's moving much quicker. We actually have additional dispatchers and applicants that will be interviewing at the end of this week on Thursday and Friday. And we're hoping to bring in another class mid to the end of January.
Great. How much does this now alleviate the OT pressure regarding staff shortage and fatigue and things of that sort?
Yeah, so that's our biggest goal, is to give some relief to our current staff. So they get trained in call intake and EMS to start with. They move on to learning the information channel, which is running criminal histories for the law enforcement. Then they move on to law enforcement dispatch, and then they typically end in the fire dispatch piece. Normally, that's a 9-month process. We've been able to decrease that process to about 5 to 6 months by just switching around the way that we're doing things. But as soon as you're cleared in one particular position, for instance, call intake, they can pick up additional shifts there. So we're hoping to get most of them cleared and trained in the call dispatch and the call intake piece to alleviate that pressure of the overtime. So we'll see how quickly these people are able to train and move forward through the training process. But we do think within a 60-day period, we're going to give significant relief to the existing employees.
Thank you. Councilman Mitchell, do you have any questions?
I think I had a couple and you asked them both, so I'm straight.
Thank you very much. I think one additional question, excuse me. Does this fill your vacancies that you have in the department, or there's still some more?
I believe after these, I believe we have 3 or 4 additional vacancies. So depending on, unfortunately, the success rate isn't as high as we would like it to be. Sometimes people will come in, they don't like the job. They don't like the hours of the job. They don't like working holidays or the overnight shift. So some of them will wash out. So that's why we're still doing the continuous recruitment process. But I do believe after we get these 16 in and working, we'll have 3 3 to 5 additional vacancies that need to be filled, which makes it very comfortable.
Okay, sounds good. Well, great work. Keep it up. Do appreciate your efforts, and especially regarding filling these holes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome to stay on for the rest of the meeting if you want, and we'll move right along to Chief Barco.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to see you all again. I will be sharing my screen. Let me know if you get it. All right, so this is our monthly report, quality of life report. As you can see, these are the definitions for our 2022 fire stat updates. Our general updates, fire education. As you can see, we reached out to 1,510 adults, 2,361 children, and slightly less smoke detector installs and carbon monoxide installs this month than we did last month. But we're still working on that process. As those requests come in, our guys go out and fulfill those requests. We did recently update our webpage and the city's webpage so that citizens can request smoke detectors and CO detectors. So a lot of that stuff was being disseminated through the NRZ meetings, but we made sure that everyone was able to see that information. Community engagement, 1022, we did a community cleanup at Frog Hollow, read some books at Rawson School on 1027, participated in Domingo Go, which was the last one of the year. We had a fire safety booth, handed out literature and some other small trinkets to citizens and children. SSU attended roughly 16 community meetings. That includes the NRZ's Disability Faith-Based Initiative and Know That Neighbor. So they really do a great job in attending the NRZ's, considering the staffing is 3 people for roughly, I believe it's 16 NRZs. So they do a good job between that and the requests for fire apparatus displays, for fire safety, house education at different locations within the school system in Hartford. So they really do a good job getting throughout the city and providing this information to everyone that needs it. 3 new apparatuses are in production, 2 engines and 1 ladder, which recently is up in Greenwood. I believe that's up in Massachusetts, getting some work done to it, some final prep in terms of lettering and small things like fire hose and some maintenance to the pump, and I believe we're getting a deck gun added to that as well. So we're hoping to have that on the road by early January, and that will be going to 197 Main. That's engine 1, ladder 6. 2 new support vehicles at EMD. Those are waiting to be outfitted. As you know, Station 11, the renovations are complete. They did the paving. They did a lot of separation and opening up inside the firehouse. The guys really do love it. This is the first time where we had male and female changing rooms and restrooms. So moving forward, when we start to do the renovations to the rest of the firehouses, we are going to partner with DPW. Paul Drummy has been excellent in providing services for the Hartford Fire Department in terms of our vision for the renovations of these firehouses. Recent community partnerships, the month of October was a lot of trunk or treat events. We did several of them, as you can see here. Our fire stat data for the month of September, you can see we had a slight increase in response time as compared to last month. Our EMS response time has slightly decreased. That's due to a variable amount of things in terms of EMS response. We continue to look at the data and reach out to the companies, tour commanders, and the district chiefs to find out how we can better improve our response time, and also if there were certain factors that added to the delay in response time. So as you can see, this is our incidents by hour, incidents by day of the week, and the top 5 calls for service for the month of October. So you can see EMS calls were 968, medical assist 515, and 622, no incidents found. Service calls are mainly if we go to an incident where they just need the fire alarm panel reset, or they thought they heard or seen something, or that individual is no longer on the scene. Incidents by neighborhoods, as you can see for October, Asylum Hill did the most calls for service, followed by downtown, Frog Hollow, and Berry Square. EMS calls in the month of October, Asylum Hill again, followed by Frog Hollow, Berry Square, and Northeast. Narcan administered, we have not been seeing the numbers like we were last year and up to this point. So you can see there were a total of 13 calls for service where we administered Narcan in the month of October. As you can see in the charts, Frog Hollow, Parkville, Berry Square, and the South End received the most calls for service as it pertains to Narcan. These are our rescue calls, mainly elevator rescues. Downtown is normally the highest calls for service when it comes to elevator rescues, and then Berry Square is second. So these are all the fires in the month of October. As you can see, Asylum Hill behind the rocks had the most calls for service. Vehicle fires for the month of October total 9, and building fires was 4. And these are fires in terms of station locations. You can see engine 1 had 2 fires, engine 10 had 1. So this information was emailed to City Council. So if you all can look at it at your leisure, and if you have any questions, just feel free to contact me. And as usual, our demographics for the department, you can see we're pretty even ethnicity wise, 31%, 35%, and 33%. And that is it for the presentation. Any questions?
None for me. Thank you, Chief.
I don't have any questions through you, Mr. Chair. Chief, thank you for your presentation.
Yes, I would also like to mention, if I didn't, we did receive $100,000 from the Hartford for a new fire safety trailer, and that's the trailer that we bring out where we teach young adults how to get out of the house, and we have a video presentation inside. There's like a stove and cabinets that we light on fire electronically through a remote, so they can learn about fire safety. So we did receive that donation for $100,000. We're still speccing it out, hoping to receive that trailer sometime next year after we get everything we want. So it's gonna really excited about that.
Excellent. Congratulations on that. Council President, I did not see you hop on. So good evening to you. Chief, I know that there has been additional speed bumps that have been installed on some of our side city streets. Are those speed bumps causing delays for arrival by the fire department?
Well, sir, any speed bump is going to cause a delay, and we've been trying to work with DDS to kind of show them how we respond to calls for service. and how those speed bumps can actually delay and the wear and tear that it causes on our vehicles. I understand what the city is going for in terms of traffic calming. It's not always a positive for the fire department, but we do understand, and we're trying to work with DDS in terms of placement of these speed bumps.
Thank you. And I know you mentioned about the apparatus. Any word on the additional tour commander vehicles that you were looking for?
Yes, sir. We did receive 2. They're still down at our machine shop, EMD, waiting to be outfitted with response lights, a new radio, and just some customization in the back for the tour commander's gear and their scout packs. But they look really nice.
Great. Any word on the upcoming fire class?
Not yet, sir. At the end of the month, this month we have a few folks eligible for retirement. So once those people decide if they want to go or not, we're going to look at our numbers and decide if we actually do need to put on a class. Because between now and I believe February, March of next year, we have a few folks that will have their time and they're eligible for retirement.
Okay. And one final question I have is the CAD system. How is that coming along with that transition and everything?
So we have been working with ES&T Sue Webster and her team to rectify or correct any issues, and it's been going outstanding. So we've actually had a couple of meetings with my team, her team, and some union officials so they can actually see what it is the CAD algorithm does. And there we go. To see what it is exactly the CAD does and how we can work together to fix it. And I believe since we had those meetings, we haven't received any other issues from the department. But we're continuously working with ES&T and our team and GIS to fix any issues that we might find in terms of responses or response times.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that, Councilman Misham. No questions. All right. Perfect. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I did want to confirm that we did receive your presentation as well. And you can continue to stay on for us. I'm quite sure you don't want to hear anything about the police department. But thank you again. Thank you for your work that you put into keeping us safe. And Chief Doty, take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Am I sharing here?
Not yet. There we go.
Oh, now we good? All right. So we'll start with overall CompStat report, part 1 crime for the week ending on Saturday. As you can see, we start on the left-hand side with our current week, this week compared to the same week previous year. As you can see, the green is all the numbers that we're down in. So we go right down the line, down 33% in aggravated assault, down 80% in aggravated assault with a firearm, down in rape by 100%, robbery by 67. So all those in the green are good numbers. We're down 72% overall with part 1 crime for this week compared to the same week last year, 93 in 2021 and 54 in this week. We look at the next kind of indicator is our 28-day period. As we see, a lot of green there. Robbery up by 1 incident in the 28-day period, which equates to 14%. And then when we get to the bottom, as we can see, homicides up by 50% in the 28-day period, which is not a good number, and shooting victims up by 9%. So overall, we're 3% over this year where we were in the same period last year. 3,704 Part 1 crimes versus 3,811 this year, which is a 3% overall increase. We still see higher numbers in robbery and robbery with firearms, and our burglary numbers are still elevated. Those are numbers that we've been tracking all year. They're a little bit lower now. They're trending in the right direction, but those are still some of our bigger issues that we're dealing with. Our cumulative homicide and shooting in a 4-year period, 19, 20, 21, and 22. As you can see on the top, that combines our non-fatal shootings and our homicides. 2021 was a much higher year than this year, and 2022. That brings into account our non-fatal shootings, as you'll see. When you take just the homicides, we were trending below 2021 for the majority of the year, but in the past couple of weeks, we have edged out 2021 just a little bit in homicide. So the top part of the screen is really reflective of the reduction in non-fatal shootings that we've seen this year and shots fired incidents that we've seen this year. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. This is just an overview: 36 homicides year to date, 126 non-fatal shootings year to date. The next category down breaks it down by month. As we saw October, 16 non-fatal shootings and 5 homicides was an unusually high October for us compared to other years. We were trending in a better direction until October, and now here we are in November with 3 non-fatals and 3 homicides. On the bottom, that graph on the bottom is tough to see, but that shows some of the origins of these incidents, but we'll dive into that a little closer in the next slides. Homicide arrests so far for 2022, we have 12 arrests year to date, 5 cold case arrests, 12 total major crimes arrests for 2022. We have 2 active arrest warrants as of right now, and then non-fatal shootings, 26 arrests year to date, 6 warrants and 1 warrant at court. Again, we'll look at that compared to other years in a minute. This is our homicide arrests for 5-year period. What we're really kind of looking to show here is what is the department able to impact, and how are we impacting the categories that we feel we can have a significant impact as far when it comes to violent crime. So obviously solvability rate is a big one. In 2017, we were at 59%, 2018, 57% solvability rate for these homicides. And then as you can see in 2019, it starts edging up, 65%, 80% in 2020, and 76% in 2021. We believe a lot of these homicides take a while to close, so you don't start to see what 2022 really looks like until we get into 2023, and these cases have time to kind of move through the system. Based on what we know about these incidents, we anticipate about, at minimum, a 75% clearance rate again this year. That is just an estimate based on, like I said, what we know about these cases, suspected shooters, things like that. But the solvability rate for homicides clearly trending in the right direction. And the same thing for non-fatal shootings. As you can see, in 2017, 11 arrests out of 115 non-fatals. That's a 9.5% solvability rate, 10.3% in 2018, 11.2% in 2019, 9.9% in 2020. And then in 2021, you see our effort for to bring about the non-fatal shooting team. That was a grant that we put a program together. We started the program. We then applied for the grant. As everyone knows, we got the grant, and it has been working well, just about almost quadrupling, certainly a little over tripling our solvability rate for non-fatal shootings. We're hoping that by solving those and bringing those people to justice, that we'll avoid homicides going down the road, which is where it's an interesting dynamic this year, where our non-fatal shootings have been trending down, but our homicides are staying the same and even trending up a little bit in the last couple of weeks. So a lot of people ask, why do we think that is? We've talked about it, but putting it to a graph and putting it on paper might be a little bit more of a story. This year's 36 total homicides, 19 of them originate from personal disputes. Just for comparison, in 2021, 9 in the entire year stem from personal disputes, and 6 stem from personal disputes in 2020. So we are more than double in that personal dispute category. Group related so far this year, 7, drug related 5, other 4, domestic 1. We have 7 out of the 36 with exceptional clearances. 6 of our homicides this year are going to be cleared as self-defense and 1 as accidental. So out of the 36 total, 7 of them are either self-defense or accidental. Both of those numbers are higher than we're used to seeing in other years. Just kind of a colorful graph to look at what that means. If you look at the left, personal dispute, it starts in 2018. Orange in the light blue, orange is 2019. The gray is 2020. The yellow or gold is 2021, and the dark blue is 2022. So if you look at personal disputes and you look at that spike, that is a significant change in our homicide cause in the last 5 years, 4 years, actually 5 years on this graph. If you look to the right, we'll talk about it a little bit later, drug-related disputes. In 2018, again, in the light blue on the left, you have 10, and then trending downward. And you'll see that that's a correlation to our drug enforcement activity here as well. So this is that category of kind of trying to control the things that we can control. This is homicide by incident. Again, 40% personal dispute on the right. In the gray on the lower left, instant dispute is 6. So those instantaneous disputes between people, whether they know each other, which is a personal dispute, or whether they don't know one another, which is an instant, which what we categorize as an instant dispute, almost hits 50% of our homicide circumstances for 2022. Which is a crazy number. Just for comparison's sake, this is that same graph in 2020. Drug-related disputes at 22%. So if we go back and forth here, that graph, domestic family dispute, you had 17% in 2020. You look at what that looks like. Here, it's 6, which is 1. Those graphs change significantly in that 2-year period. So that is kind of what we're faced with here when we're trying to get a handle on this violent crime. Ties to overall, ties to drugs in our 5-year look. You start back in 2018, where 40% of our homicides had ties to drugs. We're down at 27% this year. Manner of death, we separate guns from other, and if you look, the stats are kind of in line with what we've been talking about when it comes to these illegal guns on our streets. In 2018, 75% of our homicides were a gun was used. In 2022, so far year to date, we're at 93.9% of homicides where a gun was used. The blue number on the bottom of the graph is other. The red number on top is gun-related homicides. The last 2 years, they have increased significantly. Going along with that, these are our gun seizures. Again, we look at the problem and try to address it as a department. This year so far, 329 total guns taken off the street, 309 of which were handguns, 8 rifles, 6 shotguns, and 6 assault weapons. 53 of those are ghost guns. Again, we've talked about it in the past, but that's a troubling number. In 2021, we seized 29 total ghost guns. We're at 53 year to date. And in 2020, we only had 7 ghost guns. Again, we're at 53 year to date. Look at some of the gun seizures from the last month. Some assault weapons in there, You'll see in the upper left-hand corner, North Street Crimes Unit, you've got some high-capacity magazines in there. Those that have watched the news lately, there was a special on Fox 61 about the switch that can go in the back of a Glock. It's called a Glock switch that can make a Glock-style handgun fully automatic. It's a troubling trend. They did an entire story on it, but we've seized quite a few of them this year as well. When we do find guns with a Glock switch in it, that adds a machine gun charge to the case. So if it's a ghost gun with a Glock switch in it, that can add 2 significant charges to that case against the individual that's carrying it or using it. So as we said, focus on the drug-related violence. 2022 year to date, fentanyl bags were at 68,000 compared to 39,000 in 2021 and only 16,000 in 2020, 70% increase over 2021. Our fentanyl seizures in grams, 12,000, almost 13,000 compared to 7,300 in 2021. Again, a 76% increase. Crack still 2,200 grams of crack. So that number is still significant and is still on the rise since 2020. Cocaine, same thing. Money seized. Again, that sometimes comes in after it gets processed through the court. So that number will probably eclipse certainly 2021. And then if you look at the total number of search warrants we've done year to date on the bottom, we're at 69 compared to 59 total in 2021 and only 26 in 2020. And again, we'll just look at that slide about our homicide connection to drugs. You see a correlation. The more we seem to be enforcing that, the lower we seem to be driving that number. Traffic stops year to date, we're at 10,737. Our traffic division is responsible for just about 7,000 of those, with 6,000 total infractions issued, 4,900 of which come from the traffic division. Almost 2,000 are speeding, 741 on cell phone, 749 seatbelt, 714 stop sign, and 591 traffic control signals. So the traffic division continues to do an outstanding job in traffic safety enforcement. That is my presentation.
Thank you, Chief. Thorough and detailed, per usual. Obviously, I think the huge topic of conversation has been the most recent homicides in the city. And it's alarming that the fact that it's their personal disputes. Has your team kind of honed in as to what are driving these personal disputes? Is it arguing over glasses or some type of old personal issue vendetta that they've had against one another, an argument of some sort?
I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, the personal disputes that we've seen in the past tend to be, relationship oriented, social media oriented, a social media battle going awry. This year, as you know, we had of 36 homicides, 3 of those victims, which is, almost 10% of those victims are attributed to one incident over a dog. That's not something that we've seen in the past. We've had minor traffic collisions turn into homicides. One of the more recent ones was a rear end car accident that ended up turning into a homicide. So I just think we're seeing a general, I've said this before, but dispute and conflict resolution seems to be lacking. People are going directly to a firearm, and I think an argument could be made that there's a lot more firearms out there. If you look at how many we're seizing, we don't have more cops that are seizing these more guns. In fact, we're down officers, but yeah, we're still seizing record numbers of firearms. So I think the availability of these firearms, and I've noticed, I think many people have shared their concern with general traffic. People seem less tolerant and just quick to fly off the handle. And a lot of those are, almost 50% of those are are our homicides. And that is when you're sitting as a police department and you look at, like I said, drug related homicides, your traditional reaction from police departments can be effective in reducing those numbers. Group and gang related activity, police departments can be effective in reducing those numbers. A dispute that arises, one of our homicides, 9 of our homicides this year have been indoors. And it's difficult for a department to find a way to intercede on those and get on the prevention side. We're very good at solving them once they happen. But, one of the recent homicides was in a hotel room, on Weston Street. We just don't have a way to get in there and get, an officer that can prevent that homicide from happening. And prevention is our number one goal. Obviously solving these homicides is high on our priority, but, we'd much rather prevent them from happening in the first place. So it's just, this is not unique to Hartford. Through Project Longevity, Professor Barrow is doing a study in Waterbury and New Haven and Bridgeport as well. And, just in the Connecticut cities, we're finding the same thing. We are tracking some data and some information on, who is perpetrating these things. And there's something there as far as, 48% of our criminal justice involved shooters in non-fatal shootings and gun homicides. 48% were out on bond were out on bond at the time they shot. So I think we're not having an issue where there's, a lot more people out there committing these acts. We've always said that it's a very small percentage of our population that are committing these violent acts, but a lot of them are justice involved. A lot of them have gun arrests. Some of them have shooting arrests, and they're out there perpetrating more crime. So I think, with the mayor's assistance, we're really looking at the bond system, and we're looking at the parole and probation and trying to be a little bit more effective when the police, when the detectives and the folks that are doing this work identifies somebody as a violent individual and the next shooter or the next victim, because a lot of times, with retaliation, they can be the next victim too. We're trying to make sure that, that those folks aren't out there to do that violence, but it's difficult.
So my follow-up question was going to be, from what standpoint can the community help you in regarding these personal disputes? But also, too, having spoken with the mayor yesterday, it does seem like there's some assistance that we need from the state in the state's attorney's office, and also to at the General Assembly to really crack down on some of these folks that are on the street and are attributing to these spike in activity.
Yeah, I mean, the mayor's been great. We've been speaking with, other mayors in cities that are having the same problem. And I think the trick is to try to find a way that we're impacting the right people. You don't want to cast a broad net and have, an over incarceration issue here. But with our intelligence, the technology that we have with social media, with our ability to gather intelligence today in 2022, we really are, poised to be able to identify the folks that, are the next, as I said, the next shooters or the next victims. So I think we have to find a way to be able to impact that cycle. Long-term programs aside, the way that we can do that is to, when they're involved in a shooting, when they're involved in a violent act, when they're carrying one of these firearms with 50-round magazine that's fully automatic, is to get them, off the streets. And I think holding them for a period of time is the short fix until we can figure out something longer term. As far as the community goes, I mean, people, you just need to call. A lot of these disputes start with shouting matches. They do turn to firearms quickly, or they do turn to violence quickly sometimes, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes somebody leaves and comes back. And I think, the message to the community has to be to call us, early and often so that we can start heading out there. We're not always going to get there in time, but I think we can in a lot of cases. And, and that's key. Also, obviously, Mothers United Against Violence and Compass Peace Builders. Those are our community organizations that really help us a lot. They, by trying to keep folks out of that cycle and sending a message that doesn't come from law enforcement. So I think, helping with those organizations, whether it be volunteering or whatever it might be, is also a big help to the PD. And obviously we have, the hospital-based violence initiative. We've got the reentry center. I think the city is poised to be very effective in some of the long-term solutions. It's just the right now is, trying to put that fire out that really is this, this lack of conflict resolution, I think is key.
Thank you, Councilman Mishnah.
Chief, you talked about the, in terms of folks who are out on bond, that I want to make sure I try to get right what it is you said. A high percentage of the people who are committing these gun crimes are already out on bond. Is that right?
Yeah. So of the, about 76 or 78% of our shooters, our known shooters in homicides and non-fatal shootings, are justice involved. They've already been arrested, many of them for gun-related crimes, possession of a gun, firing a gun, things like that. Of those shooters that were justice involved, 48% of those were out on bond at the time they shot, at the time they pulled the trigger.
Okay, so when you say justice involved, that could be they are on parole, they're on probation, they have a prior that they finished their time. That justice involved is like the bigger universe. And then of those, about half are
correct
on bond. And
so I think it's 76 or 70, it's 76, I'll say percent. It's 76 or 78% are justice involved, let's say. And then half of those are
currently out on bond. Do you know
how
out
on bond when they shot?
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Do you know how those numbers, especially the bond numbers, the out on bond numbers, compare to prior years?
That's something so one thing, as Councilman Clark said, we've been working with the state's attorney's office. A lot of this data, is kind of siloed. Like we don't have good access to bond data. We don't have good access to like the backlogs in the courts. So we've been working with the state's attorney, Sharmise Walcott, to look at some of those numbers. It appears, based on what myself and Chief Spagnola from Waterbury, Chief Jacobson from New Haven, and when we've compared notes, that is significantly higher compared to other years. And some of that looks like the ability to finance bond, not having to post as much money up front, but being able to finance, if you will, bond. I think some of it has to do with oversight of bondsmen and the bonds process. So we're looking at all those things to just try and find where, not just me as the police department, but where, maybe there might be some legislative changes that can be made or some adjustments that can be made when it relates directly to, violence, and even more specifically gun violence, not a broader, change the way the bond system is, but just for some of these violent crimes where, people we're seeing people bond out with $1 million bond, $1.5 million bonds. I've not seen that before. Exact numbers, it may take a little while for us to get that, but that's just from my perspective.
My other question, and I don't want to hammer you with these data questions that I know are not specific to what you do, but do you know, if you know, not the percentage of shooters who are out on bonds, but the inverse, do you have a sense of whether the percentage of people who are out on bond who are then being involved in new shooting offenses, has that changed or gone up as far as you know? And if you don't know, I understand.
Yeah, I wouldn't, I don't know. I think that we have, from my perspective, we have always dealt with a small group of people that drive the violence in the city. That said, my experience, mostly comes from times when our violence was driven by drug activity or driven by group or gang violence, right? This year, with almost 50% being, personal disputes, that's a tougher one to track because it's not this, it's not the same. We have, Dr. Barrow is looking into like this. She does that across the country to try to find ways, not just for the police department. She was also, successful in working with the city, the police department, and the COO's office to secure that $2 million grant, which was a more holistic look at violence reduction and brings in community partners. And so we're always looking at, exactly how do we map our resources and what do we do? It's just, as you saw from those graphs, we're dealing with a different graph of violence this year than we have in the past. And, we're adjusting as rapidly as we can, but sometimes it's tough. What we do know is that it's still not, this like majority of the population that engages in gun violence. It is still a select group of people, many of which we know their names. We've been involved with them before. They have firearms arrests, they have shootings arrests. And I think that, we have to find a way to separate those violent actors out and keep them from either becoming the next victim or the next shooter, because our department, my detectives are very frustrated because they oftentimes know this is going to be the next person, and they are often right. And it's just frustrating to not be able to do something about that. And I just think that we have to figure out what that something is.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman Mitchell. We have Councilman Sanchez on the screen. I'm not sure if Councilman, you have any questions for Chief Doty regarding this presentation?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions. Good evening, everyone, and my apologies for my tardiness. So Chief, so you're basically telling us that all of these perpetrators that has been arrested for gun use, is that not a violent crime when you're using a weapon like a pistol or a gun and shooting? And why are they allowed to bond out when we have the evidence or close to the evidence where there's going to be a death? Either they're the one that's going to be shot at, or they're going to shoot someone else. What's the issue here that we need to address? And I'm assuming that is something to do with the state or the court system.
Yeah, we talked about it. You might not have been on yet, but I think there's legislative changes that need to be made there. The state constitution you can't be held without bond when you get arrested. I mean, you have to be able to be provided with bond. If you engage in certain activity, that bond can be revoked and you can be remanded. But initially the bond has to be set. There have been changes in the laws over the years that have allowed bonds to be able to be financed. I think that changes what the bond means. To me, a $250,000 bond 5 or 6 years ago was difficult to post. You had to find 10% of that.
Right.
Now that $250,000 bond, you only have to put up a percentage of that 10%, and then the rest can be financed. And those numbers change. I'm not an expert in the bond system, but I've learned a lot about it in the last couple of months. Those percentages and numbers change based on how high the bond is set. We traditionally didn't see people bonding out with $1 million bond. I have several examples of people that have. So I think that needs to be looked at. And again, that's not a police department. We're not experts in that. But there has to be oversight over that system, and people have to make sure that it's being used, the correct way. We've gotten indications that, maybe that's not the case, that maybe people are not posting as much as they should. And again, you want, You want people to be able to have equal access to be able to be bonded out based on, being arrested for something before they're proven guilty of. But at the same time, this cycle of violence has got to stop, so we have to figure out that middle ground of where we can apply those changes to make sure that folks that are the drivers of this violence are held accountable, especially when we have so much information that points us in their direction.
So Chief, do we have any information data on these individuals that has bonded out for possession of a gun or known shooters? Do we have any data on how many of those individuals that bonded out ended in either homicide or victim?
I gave that stat a minute ago. 76 or 70, between 76 and 78% of our known shooters for both non-fatal shootings and for homicides are justice involved. Now you have to be justice involved to be able to bond out. You can't bond out if you haven't been arrested, right? So if you get arrested,
right,
of the 76% that are involved in that, 48% were out on bond at the time of the shooting, almost half.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Councilman. Chief, anything else on your mind you want to discuss? Nothing?
No, we got a class in that's due to graduate in January. We just graduated a single recruit from New Britain's Academy last week. So he's over here getting some training. He was actually somebody that we brought into our academy class and then got military orders. And so he wasn't able to join the last class. So he just graduated from the New Britain class. So we're up one right now. The class of 20 is scheduled to graduate in January. We're opening up a posting coming up in the next week or so for new recruits. So if you know anybody that's interested, have them jump on the website. I think that's it for news. Yeah.
Thank you for the information. I do have one additional question, and this may not be under your pure purview, but I was told that Hartford Public Schools, the Board of Ed has entertained putting metal detectors inside some of the schools that warranted if some pending information is given. Most recent occurrence, I believe, was a month or so ago at Weaver when somebody carried a loaded weapon. In the event of that situation that warrants some type of metal detection, is that something that HPD assists the security team for Hartford Public School? How would that actually be done?
We've been assisting the Board of Ed and Hartford Public Schools. We work very closely with Daryl Roberts and their team over there, but we have not we've not provided them with any assistance when it comes to metal detectors. I did hear the same thing, that's something that they were looking into, but that's a question for Board of Ed. But they didn't ask for our expertise in that area.
Okay, great.
Nor do we really have expertise in that area. We don't really do metal detectors here.
Yeah, the
airport, the TSA might be a better one to look at.
Yeah, that's a dangerous slope in my opinion. But thank you for that info. And if I don't talk to you, have a happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and same to everybody else on this community meeting and out to the general public as well. Thank you very much for tuning in. This Quality Life and Public Safety Committee meeting is now adjourned. Have a good evening. Take care. Until next time.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, sir.